Well, hello, Internet land. My name is Andy Frisch. This is the Nutrient Health Project podcast. You are listening to episode number 27. Today, we're going to talk about 4 lesser known keys to progress. If you are watching the video, you'll notice that I have a little bit of a different backdrop. Usually, we record these in the living room / the library. Today is being recorded in the gym, so the lighting and the mirrors and obviously all of the weightlifting equipment are a little bit different. Just trying out some new things. And the biggest reason I'm doing this is because we always sit down when we record the podcast. And then Holly and I are both kind of standing up with kinks in our necks and everything. So I wanted to try and do a stand-up version of that. I have currently the video camera, the MacBook, the lighting, the microphone, everything is standing on a couple of high-quality step-up boxes. So hopefully this doesn't all come crashing down. We should be good to go. But I just wanted to do something where I could stand up instead of sit down the whole time. So like I said, episode number 27. Obviously, I'm by myself, so this would be one of the micronutrients. I think I said back on episode 25 that instead of doing the 1 episode a week, we're going to 2 episodes a week. One of them will be Holly and I, kind of in a longer format, and then one of them will be me doing solo, a la today, where it's more of kind of that micronutrient episode, and more kind of maybe over the mindset stuff or over deeper dives where Holly's just, kind of going to be deferring to me for some of the more in-depth stuff anyways. So today is going to be more of a mindset one, and again, 4 lesser known keys to progress. I think you are going to get something out of this episode. I think I'm bringing some fire on this one. So real quick, some housekeeping. As always, I took ads out of the podcast. I don't want to bore people and just drone on about other people's products. And I feel like I appreciate a podcast when I listen to it that does not have a bunch of ads or any ads. When they're interjecting them all throughout and have to keep fast forwarding, it's kind of a pain in the ass. So no ads on the podcast, no offers to sell you anything on the podcast. The only thing we do have that we make money off of is coaching. So if anything in this podcast hits and helps, whether it's you or somebody else please take 2 seconds, two flicks of the thumb there and share. Subscribe if you haven't already. Rate and review as always. If you have any questions, I'll mention this again at the end of the podcast, but if you have any questions, send them to NutrientPodcast@gmail.com. And if you are watching this on YouTube, you already know, but you can find us on YouTube under Andy Frisch, and then on Facebook and Instagram, Nutrient_official, or our personal accounts, Andy and Holly Frisch. So let's get into it. Again, episode number 27, we are talking 4 lesser known keys to progress. So number 1, forgive yourself, but don't excuse yourself. So what I mean by that is, as you are being a human being, you're probably going to make mistakes. And I've seen a lot of times in the past where clients make a mistake and they just lash themselves for it. They feel so bad they screwed up, and they have this high expectation, or they think I have this high expectation of them, which, I have high expectations, but I'm also understanding. I'm trying to get you to also be understanding, right? So forgive yourself if you make a mistake, because, as the saying goes, you learn from your mistakes, right? So mistakes will happen. If you're a human being, you're going to make mistakes. Forgive yourself for making those. And then what's the lesson you can learn from it? So kind of a quick anecdote. I am trying to really get, regimented, for lack of a better term. I'm trying to get really good at going to bed fasted. That's not something that I think everybody needs to do. Me personally, when I get to bed with a substantial amount of time, what does that mean? At least 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 or 7 if I can. When I get to bed with that amount of time fasted, I wake up clear-headed, energetic, ready to go. So that's something that I've been trying to cement and get in the swing of things. And normally, 3 days of it, and I'm really struggling. 3 days of going to bed fasting, because again, I was making mistakes. I wasn't eating enough earlier in the day, so then I was trying to go to bed fasted, and I would just try to willpower my way through. I'm hungry, but fuck it, I can make it. So you learn as you go. And again, mistakes are going to happen, right? Or just life is going to happen. So this past Sunday, Holly and I did like a 2.5 hour leg workout. Again, I'm not saying everybody needs to do it a 2.5 hour workout. That's just something that she and I enjoy doing. We like going into the gym and just really hitting it hard. And of course, sometimes it's overkill because you're so sore you can't work legs for the next like 5 to 6 days. I'm a big believer in more frequency instead of like more volume. That'll be a key for progress in another episode. But we hit a really long leg workout, came home, got something to eat. I trained a client, and then we went out and went hiking with a friend for, I was like 4 to 5 miles in the woods. By the time we got back and done from all of that, it was coming up on like, God, I don't know, 3 or 4 o'clock. And normally I'm trying to finish my eating around like 12:30 or 1 o'clock. Well, because I ate later in the day, I think I ended up having that meal at like 5 o'clock that Sunday, if I recall correctly. Because I ate then by the time we're getting ready for bed, like my stomach was kind of just finishing off digesting what I had, and I was kind of feeling those hunger pangs again, which if I'm eating earlier in the day and stopping at like 1 or 2 o'clock, by the time I'm going to bed, that hunger has kind of already subsided and I feel good. And it's actually to the point where I don't even really have that hunger anymore going to bed. But because I ate a little bit later, not saying it's a mistake, but I learned my lesson that if I'm in that position, and I knew it was going to be a tough one because I knew we were going to be hiking and all of that stuff was expected, but I was just thinking like, well, I'll either try to eat another meal when we get back or I'll just, kind of like suck it up. Sucking it up after all that activity is stupid, so don't do that. And that later meal, like I said, kind of impacted my blood sugar for when I did get to bed. So then I ended up eating another meal at like 10 o'clock that night because I just like couldn't get to sleep. Hunger was just driving me crazy. So the lesson I learned from that quote unquote mistake would be like the next time I'm in that situation, instead of just doing like, 2 meals, I could have taken protein powder, and I could have even taken like a couple of shakes that had protein and carb powder in it to replenish all of that glycogen and all that activity I was doing. So point to that is I've been working out. I mean, I started when I was like 14 and started really working out when I was like 19, and I'm going to be turning 45. This is November 17th, 2022 as I record this. I'm going to be turning 45 here in just a couple days. I still make mistakes, and I'm still learning from those mistakes because I forgive myself and I learn from them, but I don't excuse myself. So when you're trying to build progress, you can't excuse yourself by saying like, again, I'm a big fan of progress, not perfection. But I think some people can get into the whole thing of like, well, it's okay if I just go out and have a couple of drinks this weekend because I don't want to be perfect. And it's still progress. I'm only having 3 vodka and cranberry, whatever the hell people drink. I'm only having 3 of those versus 4 of those, right? Or I'm only having a couple pieces of pizza and I'm not eating the whole thing. Which again, that's progress. And we'll come into a little bit more on standards and expectations that you have to, kind of assign for yourself. We'll cover all of this here in this episode, but you can't excuse yourself. You can't just completely let yourself off the hook. There's a world of difference between forgiving yourself for a mistake and like proactively before the thing happens, excusing yourself, because then all you're doing is you're essentially self-sabotaging. And like self-sabotaging and pity parties destroy progress. So make mistakes, learn from them, you'll build progress. Excuse yourself from doing the things that you should be doing and being an adult about all of this stuff. Then when you're excusing yourself and letting yourself off the hook, then it's more of a self-sabotage. You're opening the door to self-sabotage and pity parties. So number 1, forgive yourself, but don't excuse yourself. Number 2, I can't take credit for this, but I love this phrase. It's actually from Alex Hormozy. If you are not familiar with that man, I think some people might find him a little gruff, but holy cow, he's got some good mindset, balanced stuff. This is from him. Simple scales, complex fails. So what I mean by that? Simple scales, like simple can grow, simple can get bigger, simple you can add on top of simple, right? So simple scales, complex fails. So if things get too complex, you get lost in the minutia, and we're going to come back to minutia at the very last key. But you get caught up in that minutia and things become too complex, and you have too many moving parts in whatever you're trying to do, and everything kind of falls apart. So some simple kind of things that I look to ask when I'm, is this something simple that I can add on, or is it something that's too complex and it's not the time for this right now? Can you ask yourself, can you do this for 5 years? Right? So I talked about fasting a minute ago. If somebody's listening to this and you've not done any fasting, and I'm talking about, me stopping food at like 1 or 2 o'clock and going to bed at like 7 or 8, trying to get like 6 hours of fasting, and you're like, I want to try that. And if I ask, could you do that for 5 years? And you're like, well, shit, I don't know. Like, I wouldn't, just like reduce it, make it easier. And that should be another key. Make things a little bit easier for yourself. But I guess that's what this is, simple scale. So make it simpler, make it more digestible, right? No pun intended. So ask yourself, can you do this for 5 years? Can you do this for a year, right? Sometimes it's okay to kind of push things harder for months or a year at a time. But if you don't see yourself being able to do this for like the long haul, then it might be something that maybe too complex, at least for where you are right now, right? So simple scales, complex fails. Another question that to kind of pair with this is, whatever the thing you're looking at doing, is this extraordinary or is this unrealistic? And I love that word extraordinary, because obviously if you break it down, it's extraordinary, right? You'll see that if you're watching the video, if you're viewing this with me on YouTube, extraordinary is just like ordinary but extra, right? Ooh, cool turn of the phrase there. But like, so it's not anything, it's not common, right? Extraordinary just means that most people aren't doing it. Unrealistic, that's kind of a whole other thing now. So I think extraordinary or extraordinary, however you want to say it, I think that is good. And I think depending on your goals and the level of achievement you want to get to, those goals are possibly going to set you apart, right? Because if you want to do what's normal, and, most people, again, this is just a personal preference, like, if you've listened to the podcast, if you know me through conversations at all, you know that I'm very open about, like, number one, my 2 decades of like substance abuse and all that crap. But I'm also very open about, I want to be physically and mentally like a superhero. I want to be able to have a lot of value and impact in the world. So it's this constant process. So I have no problem looking for what's extraordinary and setting myself apart from the ordinary. So that's something to think about. If it's unrealistic, you might want to shelf it at least for now and kind of come back to it, because it might be too complex. But if it's extraordinary, you can still make extraordinary simple by just breaking it down, right? And accepting a few things. So because it is important to be warned that extraordinary, like I said, just by definition, it's extraordinary. It's setting you apart, right? And I know some of you that listen to this, I know you guys are doing things that are extraordinary. You do things that set yourself apart, whether you're hitting PRs in your own home gym, or if you're writing papers and trying to organize groups of friends, right? Or if you're helping out and taking on the responsibilities of like, caring for grandchildren and things like that. Whatever the case may be, extraordinary is going to set you apart, and you have to be okay with that if you want to attain that extraordinary thing. So the things that kind of come to mind for me, they're all basically encompassed by, like, if you set your standards appropriately, then being extraordinary is more acceptable. So like, perfect example, Holly is still working as an assistant manager, and they had their kind of company-wide Thanksgiving party a couple days ago, yesterday. Anyways, they recently had their company Thanksgiving party, and of course, that means that they've got the usual like swath of cheesy broccoli and mac and cheese and mashed potatoes and all of this different stuff, like buffet style things that Holly just didn't want to have a part of. And of course, all of her coworkers were giving her shit about it. I'm too good to eat this food, and it's it's a shame you're too good to eat with us. And she's kind of at a point where, like, I was at that point 15, 20 years ago, where you just have to kind of like, if that's your goal, if you want to set yourself apart and you understand the benefits from eating healthy, then you'll understand like, okay, I'm probably going to get razzed by some people, but if I could just get them to understand how good I feel eating these foods, they might also be on this bandwagon. On the same hand though, or on the other hand, you like, there are loads and loads and loads and loads of people in the fitness industry that aren't that like, I don't want to say dialed in, that aren't that obsessive about it, where they'll let themselves have, whatever they want to have for Thanksgiving, or maybe they work out extra hard to actually enjoy Thanksgiving and Christmas. I think for Holly, it's a little bit of a different story because she's still trying to like kind of get that ultimate shape, even though I think she's there now, but I know I get the whole thing of being driven or being haunted, as I like to say. So I get that for her. For me, the example I want to use as far as like kind of setting your standards appropriately is when it comes to like, so if I were in Holly's shoes and I was at that party, I wouldn't want to have anything to do with it because a lot of those foods just don't sit well with me, like in my stomach. And it's been like that way before I gave a damn about being in shape. I can remember being in middle school and like having to be like run through different tests to see like why my stomach was so torn up all the time. So I have no problem saying no to the foods, and the grief that people would give me about it, it just kind of like bounces off. So my standards and my expectations of myself when it comes to that kind of stuff, it doesn't mean anything to me. But I will if the opportunity presents itself. We went to a 4th of July party at a client's, and he's got like the super nice pool and everything, and they had a cookout. And they had hot dogs and hamburgers. I probably talked about this in a past episode, but it's been so long I can't remember. But like I made it a point to kind of set calories aside and get a good long workout because I knew that cookout, I knew they were going to have hot dogs and hamburgers, and like hot dog buns, hamburger buns aren't going to tear me up that bad. So I made it a point to go to town on all of that stuff. And it was funny because I had some people there that were former clients and they're like, "Are you going to eat anything, Andy?" And I'm like, "Oh, just you wait." So, I mean, I went back for seconds and I might have even gone back for thirds. I don't remember. But those standards when it comes to like foods and parties and things like that, you just have to understand that if you're going to be extraordinary, there are going to be some things where you kind of set yourself apart. And when you set yourself apart from what everybody else is doing, people can get pissy about that. People can take offense to that because, you're not eating what they're eating. And like Holly's coworkers, which if anybody knows Holly, she's like the sweetest, most innocent thing. I'm better than you is never a thought that's entered into her head. So when her coworkers are saying you just think you're better than us, I'm sure that probably stung in some regard. But she made it through and she has those standards set. So again, rule number 2, simple scales, complex fails. Accept like ACCEPT, like accept what you can do as extraordinary and not unrealistic. Number 3, you can slow down, but you can't stop. So there's a very fine line between this, right? Between slowing down and stopping. And I am definitely guilty of this because obviously if you have listened to the podcast from episode number 1, there's been times where we've kind of stopped and taken breaks, right? For months at a time. And that comes from the past, like my own kind of 0 or 100 personality. So if I'm not into something, it just doesn't exist to me. Like I zero care about it. I'm 0 miles per hour and I don't care. If I'm interested in something, it's 100 miles per hour and I'm all about that thing and I'm fascinated and I'm diving in, which is where a lot of the information that I put on this podcast comes from. Just my own fascination and interest in digging deep into all of these things. Part of that, though, can become a detriment. If you don't have this, you can slow down, you just can't stop thing, because it's very easy to get burned out. And I know some people listening to this can identify with this. You guys are trying to, lose weight and you're just walking 10, 15, 20,000 steps a day in pursuit of that, right? Or maybe you're lifting so heavy that you injure something and you have to take time off, or you're pushing yourself so hard that anxiety kicks in and you have to stop the thing completely and just abandon ship. And I think that that's kind of common in the self-improvement industry because people, again, you'll push yourselves so hard that it's like the hustle culture and grind culture that we kind of put up on a pedestal in at least American society, that can be very infectious. And we can get into our heads and think like, well, I just can't stop, because if I stop, I'm a little bitch, and I don't want to be a little bitch. I want to be extraordinary, right? So when you do that, you obviously pedal to the metal, and inevitably, sooner or later, you're going to burn out. And that's what's happened with us before in the podcast, because you just kind of stopped, and then you get out of the habit of it, and you took a little bit of a break for a week or two, and then before you know it, man, it's been a month or two, and like, oh, well, we got vacation coming up, so we'll do it after we get back. Oh, I got back from vacation and I'm injured. So it's slow down is okay. Stop is not okay, right? If it's something that's important to you, slow down, but don't stop. You'll get to a point, or at least I did. I just this last time of stopping with the podcast, for whatever reason, wherever it came from, I had the thought that hit me exactly what this is, right? This number 3 one hit me, and that's why I'm doing these now. And that's why I feel like I can go from, man, I was doing once a week and that got kind of hectic, to like, oh, I can do 2 a week, because I just slow down if I need to, right? Make it a simpler, more digestible topic, because that's the beauty of what we do. I can help people when it comes to food in a number of different ways, and training in a number of different ways, mindset. I feel like I have a lot. I feel like Holly and I both have a lot of value to give. So I can slow down, and it doesn't have to be some super complex deep dive into the biochemistry of melatonin, right? So I think getting fed up was kind of one of the best things that could have happened to me. So, and again, just to kind of come back to this, excuse me. If it's something that's important to you, and it may qualify as extraordinary, it may qualify as simple, whatever it might be, but if it's something that's important to you, you have to keep the right kind of streak going. So what I mean by that is, just like with the podcast, like I said, if I took a week off, it's okay, right? We're not on Joe Rogan or Chris Williamson with Modern Wisdom. We're not on that level where we have like millions of listeners yet. So I don't have anybody beating down my door if we miss a weekend. But missing one weekend, okay, 2 weekends, well, now we've got a streak starting in the wrong direction. And now we're going to be adding momentum to the wrong, and that's it. We had the best intention to start the podcast back up probably at least 5 or 6 different weekends, but it was always something came up, or we were too tired, or like I said, hurt, or vacation, or whatever the thing might be. So it's important, again, number 3, you can slow down, you just can't stop. So number 4, and I really, really like this one. I like all of them, but I really like this one. If you're looking at the screen, you'll see 1 to 5, 6 to 10, and 11 plus. And what I'm talking about with that is years. So, and I've mentioned it in the podcast before, and most people are familiar with it, but the story of like the teacher brings in, the empty glass jar and has golf balls and some pebbles and some sand. And I think a lot of times people try to focus on the sand first. So I wanted to break this down, kind of what I think and what's worked for me, but kind of what I think and what I've observed for, 12 years professionally, like 20 years doing this just in general, in and out of gyms, 25 years actually, Jesus. But like if you're just starting out, and if you're in years like 1 to 5, so if you're in your first, second, third, fourth, or fifth year of whatever the journey is for you, weight loss, muscle gain, again, whatever it might be, I would say just focus on the golf balls. Focus on the big things, right? If you're in years 1 to 5, you really want to be focusing on like exploring and trying new things, making mistakes, like I said, learning from those mistakes, right? Just testing the water, see what works for you. Do you like lifting with machines or barbells and dumbbells? Do you like doing cardio, or do you like doing resistance training? Do you like a vegan diet or a keto diet, right? Those things will change, but just what do you like? Don't just buy into the dogma of, oh, well, you have to do barbell squats and you have to have a keto diet, right? Try things, explore things, see what works for your body, see what feels good. The beauty to this, if you're focusing on those golf balls and you're in those first 5 years, is that you can hire just about any coach, right? So you can hire the coach that has been certified for a year or two, and maybe they themselves are kind of figuring those things out. Maybe they've been, on their own fitness journey for like 5 or 10 years, but they're just now getting into the realm of coaching others. So you can pretty much work with just about any coach if you're in those first few years. And I would say even like try different coaches, though. I think the people that really succeed are the ones that kind of like shop around a little bit. So that's if you're years kind of 1 to 5. If you're years 6 to 10, I would say like now you're focusing on the pebbles. Maybe you're getting a little more detail oriented, right? You're going to be fine tuning things. You're still going to be exploring. You're still going to be looking around. You're still going to try different stuff. Maybe you can build on things. Maybe you started with like years 1 to 5, you started doing machine leg press and you feel really comfortable with the machines, and you've done whatever, like a machine hack squat, whatever the thing might be. And now as you're getting into years 6 to 10, maybe now you're just now getting into barbell back squats, or maybe you've done barbell back squats for the first 5 years and now you're looking at potentially like maybe doing a competition, or really trying to focus on getting better at the technical side of squatting and deadlifting, whatever it might be. So you're fine tuning and you're exploring. And here's the thing, when it comes to coaches, now the coaching, what's the word I'm looking for? Like the sea of coaches that you're going to pull from is going to be a little bit smaller, right? Because if you've been working out like and pushing yourself hard for 6 to 10 years, you probably don't want to start with a coach that's like just started coaching, right? Unless they're like a 40-year fitness grizzled veteran and they just happen to like, I'll start coaching people. But most likely the options of good quality coaches that you're going to have are going to be much fewer and far between. Once you get past 10 years though, and you're kind of on that like 11 plus years, now you're dealing with those grains of sand, right? You've gone through the golf balls, you put those in the jar, you've put those pebbles in the jar, right? And now you're putting those grains of sand in the jar to really fill things up. And this is, I said, we're going to come back to minutia. This is where you're focusing on the minutia. This is where you're really trying to like get granular about stuff. You're trying to really fine tune things, right? It brings the whole, I think it was like a story about like top level golf coaches. They don't sit there and like just work on a swing. They'll work on like the biomechanics of a swing of like, hey, maybe if you put your thumb over this finger instead, it's going to give you, an extra 5 yards to your swing. Whatever that. I am not a golfer, like putt at best, but that gets the point across, right? You're working on smaller, more detailed things. And so you're working on the minutia. Maybe you're working on systems that you've gone through and you've had experience with different styles of weightlifting, right? Maybe you've done some bodybuilding or powerlifting or machines or whatever the thing might be. And now you're kind of starting to marry some of those things together. You know that whatever the keto diet and like slow rep, like moderate weight training really worked for you. And you know that like intense workouts with higher carb diets really worked for you. And maybe you're going to start kind of like cycling those things throughout the year. So you're building your own systems. And the exciting thing is after you're kind of like at that 10 plus year mark, maybe now you're working on like being a coach to somebody else. Now you're taking some of that minutia, some of those systems that you've put together, and now you're giving back to other people. So again, years 1 to 5, golf balls, years 6 to 10, pebbles, and then kind of years 11 and up, grains of sand. So that brings this episode to a close, episode number 27. Again, lesser known keys to progress. Hopefully something in there helps you kind of think about some things. But the big takeaway, guys, is like, don't worry about minutia until you get later on. It's okay if you set yourself apart, but have those expectations and standards and know what to expect, right? Do those simple things. Don't worry about making things too complex right off the jump. And then the first one, I have short-term memory right now. Forgive yourself, but don't excuse yourself. So hopefully all of those 4 will help you be a better person and help you get to those results a little bit quicker. So again, Nutrient Health Project Podcast, thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate you sharing your time with me. Hopefully this new setup looks good on the video. It feels better standing up, that's for sure. The only thing I'm missing is my co-pilot. So hopefully I think we should be able to do this one together standing up like this. It definitely feels better, and my neck is not pinched and throbbing by the end of this. So thank you for sharing your time with me, guys. Share, I think I said us earlier and she's not even here. Share and subscribe to the podcast if you're not already. Again, if you have any questions and you're wondering about anything, email us at NutrientPodcast@gmail.com. YouTube under Andy Frisch, and then Facebook and Instagram, Nutrient_official or Andy and Holly Frisch. That is it. The wraps on episode number 27, episode 28 coming this weekend at you, hot and ready. Other than that, have a great day. Thank you for listening. And as always, guys, thanks for the feedback. And yeah, we love you all. So I'll talk to you soon. Later.